Good. Well, welcome everyone to the future of TV and streaming. We have a great group of panelists and a lot of panelists here. So we'll be moving fairly quickly through questions. We're going to cover content creation, content distribution, and advertising measurement across platforms. So let's get started with introductions. If you could each introduce yourselves in about a minute. That would be great. Susan, please kick things off.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Levison, and I'm head of studios at WWE Studios. I've spent the bulk of my career in the traditional content creation world out here in LA, and I've been with the company for 2 years. What WWE Studios does is we take our IP and we sell long form content, none of the in-ring stuff, none of the cool wrestling stuff, but all of the long form content that uses our wrestlers, our story, our IP. So we do everything from a sitcom at Netflix to a feature film at Netflix to an unscripted series at A&E, the gamut of genres and content as befits our various IP.
Great. Ty, how about you?
Hi, I'm Ty Randolph. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Kevin Hart's Laugh Out Loud network, as well as his Heartbeat production company. And at Laugh Out Loud, our mission is to keep the world laughing together. We develop and distribute content across multiple platforms globally. And at Heartbeat, we produce television and films of a broader variety.
Good. All right. Beth.
Hi, I'm Beth Clearfield. I head up new business development for BBC Studios in the Americas and Europe. So BBC Studios is the commercial arm of the BBC, and we have both production and a distribution division. What I used to do for new business development was I developed our original relationships with EST partners, with SVOD partners, and I'm constantly looking for new routes to market for BBC content, both new content and in our catalog.
Great. Sang.
Hi, Sang Kim at Samsung Electronics, SVP of product. I work on consumer experience on our devices. So everything from when you turn the TV on to when you turn the mobile phone on. It's working on our owned and operated services, as well as working with partners to make sure that all the content that we work on gets distributed on 1 billion devices that we have out there.
Excellent. Suzanne.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Suzanne Sullivan. I lead ad sales for Fox Entertainment across our linear and digital platforms. Over the last 10 months, I've also had the good fortune to begin to work very closely with our new colleagues at Tubi, which Fox acquired just as we headed all into quarantine. So it's been an exciting 10 months for us in a variety of ways. Before the past 15 plus years at Fox, I actually spent the first half of my career on the agency buying side of the business. So I feel like I've really had a front row seat for these past very many years for this ever-evolving media landscape that we are all navigating today, and looking forward to talking to everybody. Thanks.
Great. And Scott.
Hey everyone, I'm Scott Brown with Nielsen. I'm the GM of Audience Measurement. Previously, I was the CTO at Nielsen for our media business and our measurement products. And now what I'm focused on is leading our strategy, and most specifically architecting something that we recently announced called Nielsen One, which is our strategy and roadmap around bringing together our linear measurement along with streaming and digital together in one product that will be the future currency for the marketplace. So thanks for having me. Looking forward to the discussion today.
Great. And I'm Jonathan Hurd, a partner with Altman Solon. We are a strategy consulting firm focused completely on technology, media, and telecom. And we have 300 people across 9 offices in North America and Europe. So let's dive in with the content creation part of the value chain. We've got a real value chain of panelists here today. and talk initially about how can content creators produce TV and streaming content that resonates across genres and audiences. It is a broad world out there after all. So how for the three of you, and to some extent, even more of you that actually create content, how do you do that? Susan, maybe you
I
could
can
start.
jump in. Yeah, I was thinking. I mean, I think one of the mistakes people make sometimes when you look at the landscape, you look at streaming or cable, is to just take on the vastness of it and sort of drown in it. I think that the way we approach stuff is to go actually sort of counterintuitively very, very specific, of particular talent with a voice, a particular part of our history that we want to tell in a very specific tone, and we start from there, and then start with the creative, build out, and then it sort of narrows the field in a really clean, interesting way, and you're like, oh, there's two places that this would be perfect for. Let's start there, and if it doesn't work, then we'll expand out. But I think there's so many options. It's almost head spinning, that we always tend to start with the idea and what it best needs to be, and then we go sort of to market, and it really helps clear the field for us.
Yeah, Ty, maybe you could talk about that also.
Yeah, I really agree with what Susan just said. I mean, at Laugh Out Loud, we have multiple divisions and channels through which we can exploit content. We have an audio division in partnership with SiriusXM and Pandora that reaches, a combination, and now with their acquisition of Stitcher, 100 million listeners in the US. We have a fast channel that's distributed across AVOD platforms like, Peacock and Pluto, which is in Roku, which is quickly growing. And we have a first look deal with NBC Peacock. And so to Susan's point, instead of being so focused on the sort of like channel and the output, we really at our core, when we're thinking about ourselves as comedic creators, IP, talent, ideas are our currency. And so we find ourselves in a really advantageous position now, where when we're talking to talent or when we're evaluating an idea, we're saying, what's the best format? And sometimes it's multiple, right? We have current ideas in development that exist as a podcast, but also as a talker. We've seen stand-up platforms that we've translated to audiobooks. So I think that if you can be nimble enough, and if you can structure the deals the correct way, there's a lot to take advantage of. And then the last thing I'll say is we started talking about this concept of extensible IP, right, that can expand and retract for the medium. So we have a show called Cold as Balls, which lives as like a 12-minute episodic on YouTube. We put two interviews together. It's Kevin interviewing athletes in ice tubs. It lives on linear and across our AVOD platform as a traditional half hour. It lives on Snapchat as a 2-minute interactive, and on Facebook as a 3-minute episodic. Same idea, same concept, but really tailored for the particular distribution outlet.
That's interesting. The world of TV used to be monolithic, and what a lot of you are doing is finding audience segments to focus on and develop content that really gets into the needs and interest of those segments. What about during the pandemic? There's a need for escapism. To what extent is the content you're developing allowing people to escape through engaging and surprising content? Susan and Beth.
I was going to say, it's been really amazing working for Vince McMahon throughout the pandemic from day one. I think in the DNA of our company is this belief that we are here to give people a break from their everyday worries. And that's why we never stopped performing. I think we were the only sports entertainment group to not miss a single performance. That's how important it was to sort of the mission of our company. And I think certainly that extends for the type of programming that we're developing now. I think if, as we talk to our friends in the buying side, people certainly are not looking for dystopias right now. That, I think, the USA blue sky reign that lasted for a good 10 years, I think it's not such a brilliant thing to say it's coming back, because I think now more than ever, people want to escape. And it doesn't have to just be on the beach. You know, it can be escaping into outer space. It can be escaping in lots of different ways, but I do think that's going to be a major theme of the next few years in development.
You know, Jonathan, I have nothing to do with creating content, but I do have a point of view on it, just because so much of what Susan just said, and even Ty before, quite frankly, resonates with Fox specifically. When you think about shows like Masked Singer and Masked Dancer and I Can See Your Voice, they're very escapist. And I think that they were all shows that people needed in this moment. And what we've been able to do with some of them, thanks to creating partnerships with people like Microsoft and Hyundai, is extend that content onto social platforms. And also we've started to release those shows on Tubi as well. And what we're seeing is great content regardless of the platform. You know, we released Masked Singer on Tubi, and within the first week, it became the #1 series on Tubi after being the #1 show on Fox.
Yeah, and I would just jump in to add, while I think everyone wants to escape, and I certainly am in that category, especially taking this discussion from a basement. I desperately want to escape. I think folks are also looking for, things that made them happy and was like a form of, entertainment before the pandemic. And so, just think about movie theaters as an example, I have 2 little girls and I miss taking my girls to the movie theaters. And so that's not happening now, but what is happening is movies getting directly released on the streaming platforms. There's a lot of news about that even this week. And so I think that's another thing that, as we look towards 2021, I think will become more of a trend. And one of the things we actually just announced this week at Nielsen is coinciding with that, a new product that we're launching that actually measures that premium content, and specifically those direct to streaming releases that come straight out of studios. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. And I totally agree with the escapism, but also that kind of familiarity of waiting for a new movie to release, just getting distributed in a different way is also another thing that we're keeping our eye on.
Great point. Beth, one of the questions is around attracting fans, and you have, for BBC content, lots of loyal fans who are very familiar with it. How can you extend that and appeal to new fans as well?
It's an interesting question. It's actually related to the escapism point too. And then during the pandemic, I mean, what we found is we were already building a business across new routes to market using some of our deepest catalog. It's sort of ironic that our cutting edge digital team is using some of our oldest content to build new services and to reach new audiences. But we, pre-pandemic, we had already launched a couple of fast channels on Pluto and Zumo, and they'll soon be rolling out on other platforms that are based on a couple of older BBC franchises, classic Doctor Who, which started in 1963 and continues to this day, and or New Who's happening now, but the classics are still a fantastic product for fans to watch. And then Antiques Roadshow, which I think is in its 40th season now. So we established some fast channels with those programs and found that we were able to find a completely new audience. We still have our audience on the platforms where those programs previously ran, but are finding a new audience. And I think a growing audience, in part because people are home and looking for something familiar, or perhaps not so familiar, but sort of traditional and easy to watch. Not much is easier to watch than beautiful antiques being shown in front of castles or stately homes. And so we've seen a lot of success with that, surprising ourselves a bit, and also using those, particularly Doctor Who, to sort of help audiences find that program and other programs on services like BritBox, where they already were present. And so that's been interesting, and we're going to expand on that by launching a couple more channels in the next month or so, focused on areas where people during the pandemic are particularly interested in spending their time: cooking and home improvement, which we've probably all done a bit of in the past 9 months. And the BBC has a rich catalog of that content. Didn't necessarily have a way to find a US audience with it. So we're really interested to see how that works.
That's great. So all of these new distribution platforms that, some of them are purely ad-based, like AVOD or FAST, free ad-supported TV. They really tap into new audiences that might have more time than money, and would allow your programming to get into those new audiences as well. So yeah, let's shift over to distribution platforms and saying Samsung is not only a TV manufacturer, but you have a platform also for your own content and also other content. Can you talk about some of the innovative things that you're doing with content?
Sure. When I look at how we build products, I have three main constituents, right? One mostly being the most important one being the user. In that sense, we saw a lot of demand from all different areas last year. So, when pandemic lockdown happened, there was an unbelievable, amount of consumption that has increased on our platform. So, talking about the innovation, on the video front for the users, we heavily invested in the FAST channel. So we have our owned and operated a service called Samsung TV Plus. It's a FAST channel that's built into the operating system. So it's a one click away. And, last year when we launched this, our owned and operated content, as well as working with partners and all the dynamic events that happened, the traffic on the services in terms of what people were looking for, in terms of entertainment, in terms of news, specific content, has increased over 135% just on that channel. And also what we've seen on the distribution front is that, the partners have an opportunity to distribute their own content, own service as an app or through the Samsung TV Plus. Samsung TV Plus is the #2 most viewed service on our platform right after, YouTube. So in that sense, the consumption level has increased with the pandemic. But I think what was interesting last year was how content providers were able to be very nimble and put together content quickly, right? So when the pandemic happened, we worked with the Fox Digital, and they put together a 24-hour Coronavirus Now channel, which was taking news in from all over the US and then be able to stream that 24 hours and quickly pivot that after about 3 months of service into a all news channel and leading into elections, so on and so forth. So that was what we saw. And then we expanded that service into our mobile footprint. But I think outside of that, we also, pandemic definitely has accelerated what we do and how we look at our devices and user experience. So the last thing is, outside of a video consumption, the users are looking for how to use the device in a more rich way. So we launched we partnered with Google Duo and launched the video conferencing system on TV. And there's nothing like seeing a large screen and being able to video chat. We launched, and everybody was at home. So we launched a virtual smart trainer where using, object recognition and AI, we put a virtual trainer in front of you. So those are the type of services that outside of video, the pandemic has just accelerated how we provide services on our platform.
That's great. So there are a variety of options, even on Samsung devices, whether it's your own apps or your partners can create their own apps, or they can be distributed through your TV Plus service. Ty, given all these options, how do you think about SVOD, AVOD, your owned and operated? How do you decide where to distribute your content?
That's a great question. I mean, Laugh Out Loud was initially, when we launched back in 2017, we were more focused on a single point of distribution, right? So we had an iOS and Android app that, got amazing traction. It was a hybrid proposition, AVOD S5. So there was a freemium model. And, the app was downloaded, I think, over 1 million times in the first 3 months. And so, we got off to the races. But I think for all of us in this business, it's been a pretty quick learning curve I think it was, I'm not sure who described it as this ever evolving content landscape has really kind of, transformed dramatically in the last, 3 years since our launch. And, we quickly found that we were very relevant and valuable to this multicultural sort of millennial and younger audience, that they had an appetite for multi-platform consumption. And we started thinking through sort of what our ongoing programming strategy was. And so soon after launching, when we started to launch our radio partnerships and do deals with the likes of YouTube for originals like What the Fit, we said our programming strategy had evolved to on and beyond, right? So on our owned and operated platforms, because we wanted that first party data and that relationship, but also beyond to relevant places where our audience was consuming content. And since then, we've sort of updated that value proposition pretty dramatically as well, where our proposition is now comedy and color whenever, wherever our audience wants to laugh. So one of the best infographics that we like to share to any new incoming partner or new employee is this sort of like day in the life journey. So when you wake up and you check your phone and your feed, I want to be there with a short piece of content so that you can have a laugh on us. If you're having a lean back experience, or on your commute to work, like I want to be in your car, with jokes and talk shows to keep you through. When you're looking for a lean back experience, I want to program the movies and the television shows, whether you're navigating and you're coming us direct through your smart TV, or you're accessing us through a fast channel on one of these AVOD platforms that you're accessing there. And, whenever the world opens back up, if that's an in-person experience from an experiential perspective. So it caused us and really inspired us to double down on our proposition as content creators and distributors. And, the partnerships have been vital, and we serve all of those, right? Like we've sold shows to the likes of Peacock and Quibi. Households that we showed to Quibi are now showing up on Roku. and we've tried to let the consumer be our North Star in this regard, because what we do know from the past 3 years is that the landscape will probably look nothing like it does right now 3 years from now. So,
yeah.
Right.
If I can chime in there too, yeah. What's interesting is I think we work, Samsung works with all the companies that's participating in this in this panel. Another thing that interesting that we see is that it depends the distribution of on the user experience. So, for example, on the high profile pay-per-views, we see a lot of chitter chatter on our devices on mobile phones and leading up to that event, and then that huge traffic goes away, and then the large screen traffic turns up, and all the consumption happens on this WWE or UFC fights, on and so forth, and then the TV just takes over. There's very, very little chatter going on. So, these type of insights that we're seeing, for example, we all our TVs that we sell in the US are 100% smart TV. So no more dividing that division anymore. And then we're also seeing that 90% of the smart TVs that we're selling in the US now are not connecting any more streaming devices. So removing that friction, that single click to that event, that content, right time at the right moment, and providing that discovery so that you can get to a single click there is sort of the data that we're seeing in the back end. So we're trying to cater to the users of our devices to make sure that our partners' content, timely content, and all that data that we're seeing is the right algorithm that we use to provide and recommend content.
That's great. And as you're describing the connected TV experience, I'm wondering, for any of you, all of you, to what extent is the content that you have and the way it's presented tailored to the individual platforms? And how important is that versus, it's the same video, but just seen on multiple devices? So I guess part of that is, how much do you work with the platforms that you're distributed through, or for those of you who are platforms, to what extent do you work with content providers to customize it?
I can speak for WWE, although I wish it's not my area, but I'm happy to speak for my colleague JR, who runs the digital group and killing it. That it's highly targeted. So our YouTube content has a very specific feel, launch pattern, etc. As opposed to when TikTok exploded and my kids are using it, I'm sure, instead of studying right now. We quickly got in touch with TikTok, did some testing, threw up some videos to see, and now have a very popular TikTok channel and feed, or whatever it's called. But it's very much tailored, and I think I'd be curious to see if Ty does it the same way. But it feels like just throwing things up against a wall and letting whatever platform grab it is probably not the most effective in really giving a satisfying user experience.
Mm-hmm.
100%. And I mean, I think, the great thing about social is that, you have this sort of real-time feedback loop. And so I think the tailoring to the platform has been so important, because it won't be viewed or consumed at the lengths that you want to, particularly when you're looking to serve ads against a lot of this stuff. And then different platforms for us play different, roles. Like we think about YouTube is an extension of our broader distribution ecosystem, right? Where we're monetizing content there. We're putting maybe not, complete long form, but, a good chunk of mid-form content there. Where we think about the other social platforms is what we call promotainment, right? Like it should be ultimately live in service of driving someplace else, but we know that consumers don't appreciate just being yelled at to go to tune into something different. So this idea of it should be in and of itself, in that 60 seconds or 2 minutes, an entertaining experience in and of itself that provided value standalone, but should still be enticing enough to cause you to want to click through to view more of it in one of our longer form distribution channels.
And Ty, your description when we talked earlier about Pluto and how you collaborate with them on how your content is presented, can you give a quick overview of what that's like?
Sure. When we went to market on Pluto, it was an interesting time for them because, we were launching our FAST channel, and they were in the middle of a bigger kind of rebrand campaign. And we had this property that we were both very excited about. It was a series called Comedy in Color. It's a stand-up series that we have done for now, I guess, 4 years in a row in partnership with Just for Laughs Comedy Festival, the biggest festival in the world. We've done these mini specials with over 300 comedians representing more than 30 countries around the globe. And so we thought that it really spoke to the spirit of what we wanted to promote, and they did, in the spirit of diversity and comedic content. And so, what we said was, hey, while this content, may have been out and we're not exclusive with them, we tried to figure out how we could be mutually incentivized to window the content there, infuse it into brand communications that they had where our messaging overlapped, and sort of create a real moment in time around that. And I think as we think about ourselves, the deeper that we get into these platform partnerships, right, those are the big opportunities that are difference makers, when we can find those areas of, and it's tough, right, when the platform has so many fast channels to distribute, and the content provider is servicing so many outlets. But I still believe strongly in trying to find that inflection point of maximum impact for you and the partner, because then magic could happen, right? Like we had this amazing kind of, halo effect for the launch that had us rank really high in overall channels. And also to who, I can't remember who was speaking earlier about kind of catalog content versus new, we were able to discover new audiences, right? These new fresh comedic voices in Comedy in Color, which is an original program, help point to what is one of our most highly viewed programs in our catalog, Def Comedy Jam, right? Real classic comedic content that's being discovered by a younger audience for the first time, and vice versa. Those folks who are watching, sort of binging out on Def Comedy Jam get to discover these really new, fresh comedians. So it's a really dynamic approach to kind of programming and promotion.
Nice.
Yeah, and just to add on a little bit more there, Jonathan, from the Nielsen perspective, and obviously we're not a media company that creates content, but you sit in the middle of this ecosystem where we hear a lot of what customers are looking for from a measurement perspective, which is, a lot of times a leading indicator of what's to come. And your question around tailoring content by platform and by type of platform is spot on, and was validated by a lot of the great thought leaders on the panel here. But what we hear is an important component for us is to provide, measurement of the content itself. So, our customers can begin to understand how does, a piece of content that was curated for YouTube compared to a content that was curated for another platform. So that's something that Nielsen was already kind of providing in the marketplace and kind of increasing how much we can provide from an analytics perspective. But then the other thing that, we've been obviously hearing more and more is, well, just overall, how do the SVOD platforms compare to AVOD and to the FAST platforms from an audience perspective and from a reach perspective? And that's been something that's been talked about for many years, but I think is, even more important now when, you look at our data and it basically tells us that nearly 3/4 of all homes in America subscribe to at least one SVOD service. And that corresponds with what is definitely looking more like a K-shaped recovery more than anything else. And what that means is, there's a perspective that, consumers are going to have to, make some choices around where they're going to allocate, their monthly budgets between SVOD and AVOD. And so that's why last week we actually launched a new product called our streaming video product, which gives insights not only on the content itself, but also, it compares, what was the audience last night on the Netflix platform, total reach, frequency, things like that, and comparing that to Amazon, Hulu, as well as some AVOD platforms. So I think that intersection of distribution with content and understanding, how that curation to different platforms is distributed is more and more important going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think also what's interesting is what we're seeing in the back end is actually, one SVOD, like Scott said, for sure, but we're actually seeing 2+. And then the second and the third ones are the ones that get turned on and off
Right. Yeah.
all the time, right? So they binge watch and they turn off and they come back. So that's the type of engagement signals that we're getting in the data on our 100 million footprint that's out there on the TV side. And same goes on the billion devices to see what they're using to turn these things on and off. So on the engagement side, I think everybody over here, it touched upon it, is I think personalization is going to be key. So on our platform, we give the partners opportunity to curate their own content and merchandise it. So the platform's designed that way. So even for SVOD partners who use that discovery function to merchandise, like I think you can merchandise up to about 7 or 8 pieces of content. We're seeing about 40 to 50% engagement difference for the partners who personalize them versus partners who just throw up content, in no order. So I think personalization for different platforms, different services will continue to be a meaningful difference going forward.
Got it. Well, we haven't yet talked too much about advertising, and Suzanne, if you could tell us from your perspective, since you're talking to advertisers all the time, as these consumer eyeballs that are streaming, a lot of them are shifting from SVOD to AVOD and FAST. What are advertisers and marketers looking for from media companies?
I mean, from us, what they're looking for is the audience, wherever the audience is. And I think that's one of the challenges with SVOD specifically, is that in so many cases, the advertiser can't even access those audiences. So for us and Fox, that's one of the exciting things about the acquisition of Tubi specifically is, it's got this mass audience that's very incremental to the existing Fox linear and digital platforms. It's younger, it's more diverse. It customizes to an earlier point, it customizes what's offered to the viewers. And that's really meaningful, I think, to advertisers to be able to target those viewers in that type of content. So that's what they're looking for from us. And then, they're also looking on our linear platforms for deeper integrations, ways to get closer to the content, in some cases, ways to actually get inside of the content or access the IP in a way that, they can sort of draft off of the value of that IP that we're creating for them.
Got it. And Suzanne and Scott, what are you hearing in terms of pain points from advertisers in having their ads running during streaming as opposed to traditional linear?
I don't think the pain point is necessarily about running their ads in streaming. I think the pain point comes in where Scott comes in, which is in the measurement of it, really. And clearly the industry is working on that. As we evolve, the metrics have to catch up with the complexity and the fragmentation that's going on. And that's what we're hearing from advertisers most often, I think, is ways that we can work with them to help them measure across all of these various screens.
Yeah, and certainly at Nielsen, I hear a lot about pain points, and Suzanne, you teed me up pretty perfectly for that, so thank you. But yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it's clearly about independent measurement. That's where we come in clearly. And why we've been kind of increasing the platforms that we measure from an ad perspective in particular. So, we've already been measuring across Roku, Amazon, and Hulu for the last few years, but this year adding measurement of YouTube, Vizio, amongst others that will soon be announced. But the reason that's important is clearly everyone wants to understand, through CTV and streaming platforms in particular, just the total amount of audience that we're reaching, but what audience are you reaching and how is it performing against your intended target? Because what streaming platforms and CTV as a whole give you is, a little bit of the digital world where you can target given audiences more precisely. And so in the living room, which is highly valuable, but it's not working perfectly just yet. And so what we're really focused on is kind of giving that view of the audience and helping customers understand, where are they reaching their intended targets? Where is frequency too high, perhaps, where folks may be getting served the same ads over and over again. But really the biggest thing, and beyond all of that, or in addition to all of that, I should say, is a little bit what Suzanne alluded to as well, is how does this compare to, more traditional or linear television, and what is the incremental reach, and what does that incremental reach look like? So first part is understanding what that total incrementation is, but then also who is it? Are we reaching younger demographics, harder to reach demographics, or are we maybe reaching a similar audience as we do on traditional television? So that's really where our focus has been. And when I kind of teed up earlier, where we're moving our products to kind of provide that one view, it's for that intended purpose, because I can tell you all the platforms on this call want to know and be able to confidently sell, how much incremental reach they're truly delivering. And then everyone on the advertiser side, clearly is desperate to understand, where is their message being efficiently carried, and how can they optimize their ad spend. And so if we can, do our part, hopefully we can make that process just slightly more efficient. And then I think all boats will rise.
Got it. One concern I've heard is that with more ads being sold programmatically, unlike traditional television, if I'm an advertiser, I may not know what content my ads will be seen against or were seen against. What are you all doing in terms of overcoming that issue?
Yeah, so I'll touch on it, and if anyone wants to layer on, you certainly can do so. But you're right. Kind of like the beauty of more linear traditional television is that there's that extreme traceability and kind of trust and there are less questions about, brand safety, brand suitability, things like that, because you know where the ads run for the most part. I will say though that even on traditional television or linear television, more addressability is coming. There are ad tech solutions like Project Or, like what Xander's been rolling out, what Dish is rolling out, that we're working on measuring. But that same flexibility is coming to linear, but also that same challenge that comes with it that you just mentioned. And so for us, as we're expanding our measurement capabilities to provide that provide that holistic view, we're not only focused on measuring the ads, we are measuring the ads, and that's a high priority for the marketplace. It's also about measuring the content of these platforms as well. And so as we're looking to kind of roll out kind of our future state solution that is not what folks may traditionally think of Nielsen as the panel company, it's having direct integrations with different platforms, different streaming services, and kind of leveraging the platform as well as leveraging our panel to kind of have as much traceability as we can. So for us, it's not about measuring the ads or the content in isolation. It's really about measuring both and giving that kind of independent view to where the audience is going.
It's funny because this has been a conversation for my entire career. It's such a TV oriented conversation, right? To talk about what is the content that my ad is running in. And even going back to when I was an assistant buyer, one of my biggest responsibilities was screening reports and making sure that my clients didn't run in any content that based on their content guidelines, they found offensive. And then we moved to Jonathan's point, this programmatic world where it was all audience, and it wasn't about the content. And I think we're starting to see that now come back. And through the years, as we've sold Fox Now and Hulu, because we were TV people, one of the very first things that we did was allow advertisers to be able to blacklist certain shows so that there was no concern that they were ever going to run in a show that didn't meet their content guidelines. Now with Tubi, we're working through those same issues. A lot of Tubi's business is programmatic, and I think it's a decision for advertisers in terms of how they want to transact with someone like a Tubi as an example, because what we're encouraging those advertisers to do who have concerns about the content that they run in is to transact with us directly, and we can target specific, whether it's specific content rated series, movies, whatever it may be, or target specific genres so that we can avoid those kinds of concerns for advertisers. But it's definitely, as traditional linear TV and streaming are beginning to come together, it's becoming more and more of an issue.
Yeah, if I can jump in there too, is, agree with everything the panel said here. We also have, on our 100 million devices of TV out there, we're deploying ACR technology and getting data from our owned and operated TV, Samsung TV Plus. So we get all that data. So we're very confident that, we can figure this problem out. We already do today. We know where the ad's running, so on and so forth. So we work with the whole ecosystem with all the partners here to make sure that thing works. I think another interesting for us is I think FAST is going to a change going forward in the way we actually provide advertising as well. So meaning that in the traditional linear world, although FAST is a linear format that we broadcast or stream in, that this whole notion of 14 minutes an hour, 8 minutes an hour advertising slots is pre-configured. That's how the content's created today, right? So I think, we're looking into saying, how do we change that? Because if the ad's not available, right, and if your fill rate is not there to either not serve the ad and whatnot, we can figure out so that there's, less slots there, but, higher, CPMs that we can charge and whatnot. So, we're playing with our dials to see, user experience versus monetization. I think this is what digital brings to a traditional TV world, is to play with that mix and maximize the user consumption without ads, but at the same time, return, what we're returning today plus more just by experimenting with those the mixtures.
That's great.
experimentation, whether we're talking about content or ad innovation or even measurement, is really the theme of this whole conversation to me, because the only way that we're going to find the solutions is to continue to experiment. And we look for our advertising partners to link arms with us in that experimentation, but it's trial and error. We've seen it over the years with some of the ad formats that we've rolled out, always with the principle of what's best for the viewer and what's best for the advertiser. And then we fine-tuned it as we've gone along, just to make sure that we ultimately get to that sweet spot between those two things, so that we're serving all of our constituents.
Got it. Well, we're just about out of time, but Beth, I thought I'd give you an opportunity. What should we be looking for in 2021 from your organization?
We have a lot of exciting plans for 2021. I mean, we've announced a new SVOD service, streaming service called BBC Select that will be launching on Apple and Amazon early in 2021. We're going to launch more fast channels, as I talked about, both roll the channels we're working on now onto additional platforms, and to a point that was made a bit earlier about tailoring content for platforms, we're also, because we have such a vast catalog, we're able to take bits and pieces of it and tailor fast channel offerings specifically for different platforms that we think will meet the needs of their audiences. And so, to Suzanne's point about experimentation, that's very much something we'd like to experiment with this year, seeing if we can find new outlets for existing content that may not be completely not completely monetized in the market, and finding new routes to market for it, and doing that in collaboration with various platforms. And then we're looking at additional routes to market. We're always looking for new opportunities and talking to more partners, and very open to those conversations.
That's great. Well, I believe we are completely out of time, but thank you all. Very much enjoyed this panel with you. So have a great rest of CES. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.